Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. It's about 5:31 a.m. Central Time. Higher trade in the grain markets pretty much across the board here. Brian Split, good morning.
Good morning, Joe.
Thank you for joining me bright and early. I wanted to start off by asking you about the USDA report we had earlier this week. Seemed to me as if it was kind of a non-event. Did you have any big take-homes? Anything that was surprising to you there?
Yeah, neutral report. Corn for ethanol was reduced, and we thought that might be coming at some point. The reduction in crush, that was something that might have been a little bit of surprise. Maybe some arguments about is that because there's a lack of soybeans to crush, but there was also a reduction in crush globally. I
Yeah.
wonder if yesterday's meal trade had to do with that, just a delayed reaction.
Yeah, I didn't see any big take homes. I've talked a lot on here about the demand problems we've got in corn. I mean, exports appear to be problematic. Ethanol appears to be problematic, yet the market hasn't really reacted to that. I mean, corn futures, you look at them, we've been sideways. I think I ran some numbers today. March corn futures have only traded a 41-cent range since the beginning of the year, which in a $6.50 to $7 corn market, that's really not a ton of volatility, generally speaking.
It's not, and we've seen that in the options. Corn volatility continues to just fade away and erode, and I think that'll change at some point. But between now and the February outlook form, it's probably going to be pretty quiet unless something stirs up geopolitically, which can obviously happen at any time. And then we'll get that acreage intentions and quarterly stocks at the end of March. And I think after that, as we get into planting, you'll probably see the volatility ramp up from there.
I've got a lot of fun geopolitical stuff we'll talk about here in a second. The most interesting piece of information that I saw on Wednesday was not from USDA, it was from CONAB, and CONAB is Brazil's USDA, and they reduced their estimate for Brazil's corn crop because of late planting. Essentially, they think that a lot of the crop, or some of the crop at least, is going to be planted, past the ideal window. Is that a story? Could it become a story, you think?
It could very well have be a story, and I actually had a client ask me about the same thing.
Yeah.
When you've got such a large soybean crop and the time it takes to harvest that, and then could that lead to planting delays for the safrinha crop? But and what that does, if you're unfamiliar with the weather cycle in Brazil, is it just pushes the pollination cycle deeper into when you're likely to be more of a hot and dry bias. So we want to get the crop in earlier if we can. Now, something else, the Rosario Grain Exchange that day of the report also reduced the Argentine production further.
Yes, they
So
did.
it seems like USDA is still kind of behind where the local agencies would be for the estimates of the crop down there.
When it comes to Brazil and their late planting, they should be planting corn right now, and they've got more rain on the way. This is the forecast for just the next 7 days. And I mean, here would be your corn areas, and it's going to be wet. So the problems may continue, and everything that's out there is still reflective of a record corn crop out of Brazil. I mean, I don't think anybody's questioning that at this point, but this could turn into a story. I mean, planting day delays in the U.S., the market doesn't really care about them unless they get really exaggerated, and that's probably going to be the deal for Brazil too.
Yeah, and I tend to think, planting delays, why is it delayed? Because it's wet. And sometimes, if you get the crop in and you have good soil conditions, then you end up still having good yields. But it could be a story for a period of time.
Now, here in the United States, we've still got a drought. It's been alleviated. There was a lot of drought. If you go back several weeks, there was some drought in the central and eastern parts of the Corn Belt. A lot of that's been alleviated. There's been some wet weather. But you look at the southern plains in particular, into the central plains, your Nebraskas, even western Iowa, parts of Minnesota, Dakotas, still very much drought stricken. Here's the statistics. Corn areas experiencing a drought in the United States, 45% total. Soybeans, 36%. Winter wheat, 58%. Spring wheat, 64%. I hadn't looked at that spring wheat number in a while, but 64% of U.S. spring wheat areas experiencing drought. Does the drought matter to the markets at all right now? And if it doesn't, when will it matter?
Yeah, probably not right now. It'll matter more as we get a little bit more focused on our own domestic production cycle. And I think you mentioned two things. I mean, you're going to have the Western Corn Belt, and so the implications here, because we've had drought, in the previous growing cycle. So we've seen some really strong basis levels. If we stay dry out there, then that's going to continue to be a concern, and could lead to some very strong basis levels again this crop year. But then on also the hard red wheat, and the spring wheat, and hard red, that'll be something that we really look at when wheat's coming out of dormancy. We start looking at those good to excellent ratings.
Yeah, it may be a while, but I mean, if this drought is not fixed, if you don't get the drought busting event, I mean, it's going to have implications on everything from the acreage mix to yield possibilities. I mean, cattle herd, I mean, you name it. Export sales last week, kind of a mixed bag. Corn sales, I'd say, were still pretty good at 46 million bushels. Japan was the largest buyer there. We're still way behind where we need to be in terms of sales and shipments in corn. That's an old story that we've talked about a lot. Soybean sales were not good. They were toward the lower end of expectations. And typically, like right now, it's February. I mean, we're usually kind of past our big soybean export window for both sales and shipments. And with this big Brazilian crop, I mean, we may continue to see weaker sales there.
And we should. And actually, 460,000-ish tons, even though that's down as you have here, 38% from the previous week. That previous week was much bigger than it really should be for this time of year.
Yeah.
49% from the 4-week average. Those previous 4 weeks were bigger than they should be for this time of year. So, just we are still selling beans, but yes, we should see Brazil really take over on the export front. I just want to see corn over 1 million tons a week. If we can maintain that for several weeks in a row and keep that trend going, then maybe this export story could turn a little bit for the better.
Yeah, I think that some of that will hinge on this Brazilian weather situation. Like China set it to buy Brazilian corn now, and they have been buying Brazilian corn. And if they end up with that monster crop there, that may steal some export business away from the U.S. I still don't know if China is going to be a long-term, like big picture importer in corn, or if what we saw the last 2 or 3 years was more of an exception. I guess that remains to be seen. Wheat sales were absolutely terrible again.
Yeah, wheat sales definitely a concern, not good there. And I think that you're pointing towards a bigger question that I think is really important for the producer to ask themselves. We had some tremendous business from China a couple of years in a row, but prior to COVID, and prior to African swine fever, we did not have that type of buying from China. They might buy 1.5 to 3 million tons a year.
Yeah.
So yes, they changed their feed rations, but I think we need to really figure out what do they need on a year-to-year basis. I think they went on a really strong buying spree, but we're not going to see that type of volume continue moving forward.
Yeah, it's a big wild card. They've always been a consistent and they continue to increase soybean imports almost on an annual basis, but corn is kind of a different deal. So it remains to be seen. We talked about Argentina crop estimates earlier. We had another group cut their estimate yesterday. This is the Buenos Aires Grain Exchange. They are down to 38 million, which is below USDA, but above some of the private groups. This is old news now, isn't it? I mean, that the Argentina bean crop's in the mid to upper 30s, maybe mid to lower 30s, depending.
Yeah, if this number was lower than a Rosario Grain Exchange, then maybe it would be a number the market would get excited about again. But they've already seen lower numbers, so I don't think this is anything to get too worked up about.
USDA had its number at 41. The Grain Exchange also, they kept their corn number unchanged at 44 and a half. USDA is at 47. Those numbers could come down a little bit. But yeah, I tend to think that the soybean market has probably discounted the majority of this by now. All right, into some fun geopolitical stuff. So I don't know if you've been monitoring this story. So there's an American journalist named Cy Hirsch, and he's got a Substack, and he's a Pulitzer Prize winner, very reputable dude. And he published this piece on his Substack, essentially blaming the United States for the explosions that damaged the Nord Stream pipeline back in September. He's supposed to be a reliable source, had some unnamed but supposedly reliable sources in this. And Russia is now blaming the U.S. directly for this and says that now they have evidence. The U.S. still denying all of this, but this is just continued escalation in this situation.
It is. So, the implication here is that the American involvement in the conflict is more direct. And so some of the other news here recently, there's reports that we've got another wave of attacks coming from Russia, an additional I think 500,000 troops,
Yeah.
several thousand aircraft, several thousand tanks. So it seems like the activity there is about to ramp up again. We're coming up on the 1 year anniversary, and just with this, it points towards U.S. involvement both on this side, and also I think a lot of the attacks from the Ukrainians, with some of the equipment that we've given, they need U.S. intel to make them work effectively and hit targets effectively. So this is all just things that you need to keep an eye on moving forward.
The grain markets specifically have not reacted or cared about any of this for months now. I mean, these headlines just fly over the head of anybody who's trading wheat these days. I mean, Russia, even this morning, was talking about the grain deal again, how they're critical of it or whatever. It's not working out for them. I mean, the markets just don't care. The U.S. denied all of this. They said it's utterly false. But I still think in the back of my head, I mean, that this Black Sea thing, if it goes the wrong way, it could have a big impact on the market. What's that impact? I don't know. But gosh, I mean, they ship so much wheat out of the Black Sea, and Russia in particular. I mean, there could be potential problems down the road, I think.
Yeah, and the market's really discounted the wheat market based on the size of the Russian crop, and that was one of the things on the report earlier this week, as they did increase the size of Russian grain crops, and so if you start to think the other way and say that we're going to see a reduction in export capability out of that region, you have to admit Ukraine has done a really good job of getting exports out of their country, considering what's going on over there. But we have seen, short covering from the fund manager in wheat that's taken futures and hard red well off of the lows, almost $1 off of recent lows.
Yeah.
But you got other markets like natural gas, where the spec fund short is extremely large. And so any of these markets can really bubble up at any time. But like you said, it just hasn't really gotten too aggressive yet.
I think you need to see a material disruption to exports out of the Black Sea, or you need to see an actual tangible change and not just talk. That would be my 2 cents. More geopolitical stuff. Everybody loves the spy balloon story, of course. And now the U.S. says that the spy balloon was capable of collecting communication signals. They say it was part of a military spy program. So the U.S. is not happy about this. They've got the balloon now, and they say it has spy equipment. Some of it is U.S.-made spy equipment. China refused a phone call with the U.S. Defense Secretary. They've denied any wrongdoing. So we've got geopolitical tensions with Russia and with China, and some people might even say that those are the same geopolitical tensions.
Yeah, it's all related. And there's the other story with the corn plant in North Dakota and the U.S. Air Force saying that could be a national security risk. So there's kind of two stories in 1 week, where you have China, you have U.S. Air Force, and you have national security risk. And those kind of three phrases put together in two different stories, that's a bit of a concern. We've seen what relations with China can do to the general perception of soybean exports and values for soybeans. I see this as, this is kind of a posturing, a passive aggressive move from China. It's kind of saying, hey, we're out here doing what we want to do right now. Like you said, it wasn't just the U.S., it was multiple countries. And I think if you follow the path of some of these balloons, it's going over or very close to military installations in a lot of these countries, where they're definitely taking some intelligence.
CFTC is missing in action. They did not provide a commitment of traders report last week. They haven't updated their website. They're still talking about a cyber incident that resulted in the delays. I don't know if we'll see a report today or not. So it seems real obvious to me that the spy balloon hacked into CFTC, and that's why we haven't seen a report, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, you know what? There's just a lot of weird stuff going on the cyber front right now. I mean, there was some outages, if you will, in a lot of the social media platforms a couple days ago, and that's something that's been talked about as the next potential pandemic would be a cyber pandemic.
Yeah.
So it's just discomforting, but yeah, I don't know what's up with CFTC. I mean, this is data that you should be able to provide not only just on a Friday to Friday basis, but you would think you should be able to do this stuff every day. I mean, with the technology that we have and knowing exactly what's being done and by large participants, but I don't know what the deal is here.
Yeah, when I run the CFTC, it'll be real-time data every day, like within an hour of the close. That should be possible in this environment. Electronic statements, communications, all of that. Cattle market was mixed yesterday, guys. Outside markets this morning, U.S. dollars up just a little bit. Stocks are off. Gold's down $3. Crude oil attempting a recovery, up $1.62 in the March WTI 79.68. Brian, you were on with me yesterday for the subscriber only video, and we talked about energies specifically. Do you have any thoughts on general thoughts for the public audience here on energies? I know your charts were kind of bearish looking, I'd say.
Yeah, I think with the technical analysis of the energies right now, if I was just going to make some simple points, whether it's crude oil, heating oil, which is your diesel fuel proxy, RBOB, which is your unleaded gas, and then natural gas are all in downward trends. And so we gave some price targets of what the levels might be if we continue these trends, and what needs to happen in order for the trend to reverse, essentially. But until proven otherwise, the trend is down for the time being.
Hey guys, everyone have a wonderful weekend. Brian, thank you for joining me this morning. Guys, we'll catch you Monday, all right?
Thanks, Joe.